Helping Seniors Television, all about improving quality of life for seniors. If you're a senior, know a senior, or plan to be a senior, then this show is for you. It's all about helping you develop your own aging plan so you can age actively and with dignity. Helping Seniors Television from the Helping Seniors Network of information, education, and resources.
I'm Kerry Fink with Helping Seniors. Welcome to Helping Seniors Television. On behalf of Joe Steckler, our president and founder, Nancy Deerdorf, our operations director, and the entire Helping Seniors crew, we're so excited to have you here. At Helping Seniors, our mission is to educate, inform, and connect you to the resources that will make a difference for you if you're a senior or the senior you love and care for, or maybe you're a child or got an uncle or a mom or dad or somebody that you're trying to help through the process. All this information is going to be good for you. And for today, we have a really interesting topic to talk about. And I was telling our guest, I really hadn't heard this term before. Many years ago, my mom winding up in a hospital, and they introduced me to a case manager to help plan her discharge from the hospital. And so today, what we're really going to learn is what is case management, because for some of us, we may be familiar with that, but there's other levels to that. So I'm really excited that we get to have the privilege of having with us on today's edition of Helping Seniors TV. It's Rachel McLain with the law office of Amy B. Van Fossen, and you're the director of case management for the firm. Welcome.
Thank you.
So I was asking you before we were rolling the cameras, I said, I really want to take this from ground level because, as I just mentioned, the very first time I ever heard this term case manager was in a hospital. And I remember thinking, like, I don't even know what that means. I kind of gather it's somebody's going to try to help my mom with something, but I really didn't know. And then as we became more and more involved in learning more things about the services and things that are beneficial for seniors, really got to understand that that's just one type of a case manager. So maybe you could take us back to the beginning and kind of explain what case management is and how it's beneficial for a senior.
Absolutely. A case manager, the thing that you really want to know about a case manager is they are there to help you gather resources.
Okay.
They're extended arms to you, and no matter what discipline they actually work in, their job is to help you get to an accomplished goal by gathering resources and making sure that you are safe. So that can be somebody who's in a number of different facilities or areas. You mentioned somebody who's in the hospital, a case manager in the hospital. Their job is to specifically get you to exit the hospital in a safe manner. So they're looking for resources that are going to help you accomplish that goal. So they're going to be reaching out to skilled nursing facilities, to home health companies, a number of different things that would maybe even be able to get you some durable medical equipment to get home. But their very specific goal is to get you to exit the hospital in a safe manner. Likewise, you might have a case manager if you have Medicaid benefits. You might have somebody who is a case manager with your Medicaid benefits, and their job is to make sure that you're living in a safe environment, that you have the resources that you need in that environment. In my case, I am the director of case management for private case management. So what that means is that we are assigned not to a task, and our goal is not related specifically to the place that we worked for, but instead related to you. So I'm working with a family or with a client to make sure that their lifestyle is safe and that they have all the things that they might need for resources. So whether that's medical equipment or home care, or whether that's finding a new doctor or even paying for their bills, helping them to establish a home system or living in an assisted living, we're there to be assigned to that person and help them accomplish all of those goals reasonably.
You know, I was thinking as you mentioned that, because in my experience with the discharge from the hospital, the case manager came in and said, listen, we've talked about this. The best thing for your mom is that we need to get her to do some rehab and do some physical therapy, some occupational therapy. And, for those of us when we're new to this, we don't even understand those terms. So we're kind of like, we're trying to not look stupid, but still trying to answer the questions. And I remember one of the most interesting and maybe even frustrating moments was they said, here's a list of skilled nursing facilities. You need to pick one. And so my first question back to the caseworker was, well, what do you recommend? And I can't help you with that. So I was thinking like, oh, so now I'm going to try to manage this, but I don't really have a background, even though I'm, quote, the loving son and wanting to help, but I really don't have a background to help. And I think that's one of the things that you are able to do when you step in and you're helping a family as a case manager. Am I saying that right?
Yes, actually, and you're correct in that the disciplines that are working within a facility are sometimes also placed in a little bit of a constraint that they're to show you what resources are available to you, but they are not supposed to be giving any kind of opinions. When you have a private case manager whose assignment is, in fact, to you, they have a little bit more leeway in being able to give you some information, and they're going to be using a number of resources to pull together what information they want to share with you. Oftentimes, they're going to be working somewhat out of personal experience because, what you only see once in a lifetime as a family member, a case manager is seeing, several times a day with their clients. And so they do have some personal experience with the surrounding facilities and agencies and such. But we also oftentimes will rely on the authority that's doing the surveys for a lot of these different facilities and agencies to see what's going on with them and their oversight. Because even those of us who are stepping into facilities or working with these agencies on a daily basis, we really have to rely on ACA to give us a little bit of insight as well. So there is a website that we go to that will show us what their surveys look like, if there's any difficulty with their licensing, if they're, what specifically they are licensed for, all of those things, we rely on those resources ourselves.
Even as you were talking about that, I was thinking when it comes down to this case, I remember they handed me a book and said, you can, look through here. This got I think it was stars or something, like this is the number of stars each facility has. And so I remember thinking, well, why wouldn't I pick like a 5-star versus a 2-star? So I don't know if that was a very unscientific way maybe to go about it. But I remember thinking boy, I really wish I had somebody I could call and ask, what's the correct decision here? And I know they, like you said, they were trying to be helpful in that case, but that wasn't really their role. And I guess they were precluded from being able to say this might be best in the situation. But when we talk about case management and what you're able to do for the people that you work with directly, we're not talking about just a decision about going to a skilled nursing facility. You get involved in medical care and different decisions that need to be made along the way. Am I saying that right?
Yes. So there are a lot of different case managers out there, and each firm does things a little differently. So if you're ever looking for a case manager, I think it's really important that you're asking them what they do get involved with and how far they go with certain things.
Okay.
If they aren't able to accomplish something within their own team, how do they resource out? How do they find those resources? Do they vet them? Those kinds of things. It's very important to know. But oftentimes the team themselves serves as a resource in many different ways as well.
Yeah. We, as Helping Seniors of Brevard, we're a nonprofit charity that Joe Steckler established literally more than 12 years ago. And his goal was, after having built up the Brevard Alzheimer's Foundation, getting the Joe's Clubs established here, which are those great senior daycare centers that are located throughout the county and make a difference for caregivers and the people that they're looking after. I remember he said, Gary, seniors have issues that go well beyond just the memory care issues, and we've got to have a resource that gets them connected to answers for the situations that they're facing. And I'm saying this because I'm really often surprised how much of a difference we're able to make in people's lives as a very small nonprofit, but it's because our people have a list of the resources. And so somebody calls and says, here's what I'm up against. And then they can go to that list of resources and try to find a solution that's going to fit or make a difference in that particular case. I kind of hear what you're saying is that you're able to do that, but even much more in depth because you're able to look at all facets. And whereas people say, are you a referral service? We say, no, we're really kind of like care management, because typically somebody calls us, it could take Nancy 3, 4, 5 calls before they've successfully moved the needle on whatever the challenge is faced. But you're used to getting involved in a lot of different ways. Sometimes it could be the person doesn't have anybody else to help them. It could be that the extended family is out of town. It could be that they're in town. Because I remember that, even when you're trying to make all these decisions for your aging loved one, you're busy with everything else. And then not only that, you would have to research everything somebody tells you to do. This is what you are able to do that makes such a difference, right?
Right. We have plenty of clients who come direct to us and ask us to be their right hand to go through, their elder years. But we also have guardians. We have powers of attorney, other family members that'll step up and ask for a little bit of assistance too, for a number of different reasons. You're right. They might be out of town. In some cases, our families don't have children. Sometimes they have children that live in another country, or even children that are incarcerated. It puts them in a predicament where there's really no person to be boots on the ground. And so sometimes a case management firm will even fill in the legal role. In our case, I work for a law firm, and so the attorney will serve as a power of attorney, healthcare surrogate for a person, and then we become kind of an extended family member to act those things out. So if you're in an emergency at the hospital, I can be alongside you. If it's just the everyday needs of helping to pay bills or something like that, we can help with that as well. And there are clinical team members as well that can go to a doctor or feed information back and forth from one physician to another, or even to family members to keep them apprised.
The value is really in the olden days, they used to call it a Rolodex. You'd have all these numbers and you'd spin it around and find the number or for the resources you needed. Now, of course, it's all computerized, things like that. But really also, I think one of the values of having a case manager involved is, as you just pointed out, it's not their first rodeo. They've been through this a lot, helping a lot of people along the way. So they kind of know when they get that call, like, here's what we're facing now, they kind of know where to dive in and begin to try to make a difference. That's, I think, one of the things that probably brings also a great deal of peace of mind to the people that you guys are working with.
Right. Our case managers are not only involved in a client's everyday life, but they are entering facilities. They're working alongside agencies and having to report back and forth on how somebody's doing every day, or coming together and creating a plan of care for a simple assignment list inside a house so that somebody can work. So we know which companies are going to work well in that fashion, and that we're going to be able to work together alongside each other. But we're also out there in town, going to networking events, or communicating in these means, or any number of different ways that we connect to other community partners. So if we feel that there's something we have not seen before, which is rare, then we know that we have a group of community people that we can reach out to and say, hey guys, have you ever seen this happen? And where's a particular resource? And we know exactly where to go to get that.
And what I think is fascinating is you're involved in what I would call those clinical situations where somebody's, within medical care or hospital stay, or, some sort of an extended stay after a hospital visit, or things like that, rehab. You get involved in that, but then there's a lot of just much more, I would call it much more day-to-day stuff that I've seen you guys get involved with. You help seniors, with everything from bill pay to different things, depending on what the circumstances. Talk about, again, if somebody doesn't know what a case manager can do for them, they probably don't have a sense for how valuable that really is.
I would imagine so. Sometimes you don't know what you don't know until you know it, right?
Right.
So I believe that wholeheartedly. Each case manager relationship with a client is very much individually set up for what that person needs. And so for one person, that might be that they have a vision deficit. And so just being in a safe environment that is synonymous with what their needs are, and helping them to pay bills, maybe their major needs. But then you might have somebody also who is feeling a little bit forgetful, and putting some systems in place to help remind them of certain things. It might be a little more helpful for them. Transportation tends to be a really big need for a lot of people. They want to stay home for as long as they can independently, and they don't quite know what that looks like, and how a case manager can be helpful in that situation. And so there's a number of different things that we would look at. One, we would be looking at, is the home itself safe? Do you have clear pathways? Can you get to all the resources that you need within your home? Is there something that we can do to modify things to make it safer for you? And there are free resources around town to help with grab bars or ramps or anything like that. If your issue is getting to and from the doctor, there are free transportation sources around town that we can work on as well. So it really depends on what that specific person needs. And what we do is, a lot of times we sit down and we talk about what today looks like and what emergency plans we want to build. So if there's a hurricane coming, how do you handle that? Or a number of other different kinds of emergencies. Do I need to worry about taking care of your pets or anything like that? And then based on what we're talking about, it tells me exactly what resources in the community I need to pull together for you.
You know, even as you were talking about that, I was thinking about, it's really a wide range of services. I've heard somebody, I think it may have been Amy herself in your office, mention that sometimes, jokingly, you guys say it's like rent a daughter, because you guys are there to step in and cover kind of whatever the situation is calling for at that moment.
Right, absolutely. And that could be anything. You know, whether it's just having a little bit of some companionship or just having somebody to lean on, because a lot of people, the biggest problem is just relieving the burden of what happens if that emergency comes. You may not even need the help today. It's just a matter of having someone to lean on when that eventual emergency comes. But in our case, in our firm, and a lot of different firms will be different ways, but we're on call 24 hours a day. Wow. So if you have an emergency in the middle of the night, so do I. And our team is going to be there, whether you're in the emergency room or whether it's us just feeding information to and from a particular situation. That's okay. We're there to resolve that issue no matter what time.
You know, and that's quite a discombobulating kind of situation when someone winds up in an emergency room. You know, everybody's rushing in with a bunch of questions. Oh, we need your medication list. We need blah, blah, blah. And we need to know about the insurance. We need to know about all these. You know, all this is going on at the same time that they're trying to figure out what else is going on. And, you know, that's very disconcerting as a family member because we really aren't equipped with the knowledge to know how to do it. But I guess that's another area that you come and kind of bring in a peace of mind because, again, you understand how it all works and you're able to navigate that and help not only the senior, but the family kind of get through that effectively.
Right. When we start somebody in case management, two major pieces we do right up front. We have a clinical assessment done by an RN case manager that gives a snapshot of what today looks like. So if you have an emergency and you're in the hospital, I can show that today snapshot to the doctor and they can see whether there's something that's dramatically different if you've had a change of condition. Then we gather your IDs, your insurance cards. We talk about all of those inevitable emergencies like hurricanes that come around in Florida and what we're going to do in all those situations. And we compile all that together in both a digital and a paper file so that no matter who's coming to your aid, whether if there's no cell service and the power's out, we have a paper binder that we can take with us to the hospital to share with that doctor. But if that's not the case and I'm able to, if the call comes in at 2:00 in the morning, I can send a digital file to the doctors to give them your advance directives and talk about your wishes, give them everything that they would need to bill insurance, give them your copy of your immediate medication list and a snapshot of what today looks like for you.
You know, and even through all of that, you know, there's a point that you brought up that is really near and dear to everything we try to do in helping seniors. Joe, from the day he founded the organization, talked about, you know, everybody needs to create an aging plan. And I sound a little bit repetitive about this because we live in Florida, so we understand a hurricane plan. We go, that means you want to prepare what you're going to do in case a hurricane is coming at you. It certainly does not mean you're wanting the hurricane to come at you. It's just you want to be prepared. So when Joe talks about an aging plan, that's what's in his mind. We euphemistically call it getting your ducks in a row. But part of this is you work with clients who are not at all in, you know, like all kinds of trouble. What you're actually doing is helping them get established, like you said, now, right? So that if something comes up or as something comes up, everything's already kind of like locked in and there's now a procedure or a plan to follow if things do get rough.
Right. Actually, about half of our clients are on what we call a standby program, which means we're going to do all of that stuff right up front. You're going to get to know us pretty well, and we're going to get to know you intentionally, because if we have to act on your behalf or step in and talk to a doctor about what's going on with you, we really want to know what that looks like on a regular basis. But then we step to the background and just communicate like every 3 months or so and to see if there's any change of condition or if you have questions or maybe you have something that the doctor prescribed you and you're just not sure about certain things about it and you want the nurse to do some research. So a nurse is going to call you every couple of months just to check in. But we truly do take a background position so that we're there when you need the help, but we don't have to be there on an ongoing basis.
Well, you know, it's really fantastic what you're able to do and how that impacts the seniors and the families, because it probably gives them a real feeling of a sense of security of knowing, like, I don't have to, because we actually said that. So our theme has been getting your ducks in a row. But as we've studied the different areas, the corollary, and it actually becomes another theme for us, is don't try this on your own. There's so much expert help. There's no need for you to have to go out and try to Google everything under the sun, because as we often say, if it's on the internet, it must be true, right? And so there's so much information available that is very difficult for somebody to actually sift what is relevant and appropriate versus somebody's just crazy idea that they wrote up, a blog about or something. And I think one of the things that I wanted to point out or to ask you about is that you guys are very big. I'm talking about as a law firm. You're very big on the idea of helping people get organized with this kind of plan. And I was going to say, I think it's somewhat unusual that a law firm, an elder law firm, would have a case management department. Is that the case?
Oh, for sure. As a matter of fact, I think our firm is the only one that I'm aware of in the area. There is a nationwide group that has kind of the similar platform, looking at things holistically. We specifically started because Amy, our owner attorney, had lots of circumstances that unfortunately our clients had been exploited or their care was not to a reasonable level. And so she had a hard time for a good number of years where she had to resource those things out, but she doesn't have the ability to leave the office on a regular basis and get her hands on all of those resources the way a case management team would. So she decided that she wanted to be more involved in those clients' lives. And so she started case management based on one person who had been exploited, unfortunately, actually by a professional.
Oh, wow.
And so it was a kind of a rough situation. She decided she wanted to take a more active role. And then from that, our case management department was kind of formed, and we've grown since then.
It seems logical because I know when we've done different, and there are a lot of Helping Seniors TV programs where we've talked with some of the excellent attorneys at the law office of Amy B. Van Fossen on a number of different topics. But the constant theme of almost every message that we've visited together on is about let's get this done early while we still have every option in the world available to us. We can do this in a crisis mode, but then things are much more limited, probably by definition, much more expensive. That's a question I wanted to ask you about. Is having private case management like only for rich people?
Oh, no, absolutely not. As a matter of fact, most case managers have a very small fee, if any fee, up front when they're kind of establishing with somebody. It does not take a whole lot. It takes a bit of time to get to know each other and gather the important information. But after that, you're not going to be dealing with major ongoing fees by any means. What I would say it's important for somebody to know in case management is that your billing cycles might go up and down. And that's really dependent on what's going on in your life. You're not going to be billing forward for case management. You're going to be looking at what's already happened. And so talking with your case manager about what you want those parameters to be, if you have a specific budget you need to stay in, and how active you want them in each role is really important. So if you're going to have a hospitalization, planned or not, the case manager needs to understand how involved you want them to be in that situation so that they can make sure to keep your bills to a reasonable level. But you could have a major emergency. For instance, you could be going into surgery and you might have your case manager attend that surgery if it is a major. And then the next month you're back into normal situation and you have next to nothing, if a bill at all. And so it's just something to be aware of.
So really your advice to families that come in or that you interact with is much better to get this all organized ahead, because it's not that much cost to get everything set up and coordinated. But then you have that peace of mind knowing you run into something, you've got a team to back you up.
Right. And truthfully, you're in control of what that looks like. You're signing into a case management contract with capacity. So you've decided you want this help, and you've decided that you want that person to have this much of a role. So you determine what that's going to look like, and then you determine what your bill's going to look like also.
That's another thing, because I've heard from every elder law attorney at the law office of Amy B. Van Fossen that I've ever talked with, they say, it's really important to do these things while you have capacity, right? Because so often somebody will come into the office and say, well, mom's in the hospital. She just had some situation and now she's down for the count and we got to fix this and we got to fix this and we got to fix this. But you can't fix that because mom didn't sign the right paperwork to enable you to be able to do that. And I've heard it, said so many times, well, now really the option is guardianship, which becomes expensive. So again, this is like a battle cry to get this stuff started early, right?
Absolutely. A guardian and a case manager have very similar roles. They're doing very similar things for you. The difference is when you come into case management, you're choosing who that partner is and you're deciding what you want their role to be, and you're still holding on to your own rights to make some decisions. In a guardianship role, there are a number of different ways that can come through a court. And so sometimes you have some rights to make decisions, sometimes you don't have any at all, but that's really a means that's put in place because you no longer have the capacity to make that decision and didn't take what the court would call a least restrictive means, which would be a power of attorney and healthcare surrogate, in order to avoid.
So important to have this discussion with you, Rachel McLain of the law firm of Amy B. Van Fossen, Director of Case Management. How does somebody get in touch with you if they say, I'm intrigued by this, I need to learn more about case management, and maybe that's something I need to look into? How do they reach you?
You can always call our law firm directly at 321-345-5945. And my name again is Rachel McLain. You can ask for myself, or the receptionist would be happy to set you up with a consultation.
So important to have this conversation about learning and understanding what a case manager does and how it's different from the ones that you might encounter at discharge time at a hospital or something like that. And just knowing all the help that is actually available to you. So thank you, Rachel, for joining us today. And thank you, viewer, for joining us on this edition of Helping Seniors TV. On behalf of Joe Steckler, our president and founder, Nancy Deardorff, our operations director, we'll see you soon on the next edition of Helping Seniors Television.
I'm Joe Steckler. Thank you for joining our program today. I'd like to remind you that our senior information line is available to you at 321-473-7770. There you can get help and direction that could be helpful for your specific situation or circumstances. The work of helping seniors is very important, but we can't do it alone. That is why our sponsors here in Brevard County are so important. I'd like to thank our many area sponsors, businesses, and medical providers who support the mission of helping seniors that help us carry the cost of our media efforts. If you'd like to join us either as a business partner or simply donate as an individual, we welcome your call at 321-473-7770. You are always welcome to visit our website at www.helpingseniors.brevard.org. Thanks so much for your help. It does make a difference.